All right. Well, thanks for being willing to talk to me about what I assume is now a 10-year-old game. Could you just give me like a quick sentence or two about yourself for anybody just stumbling across this who's just, I don't know, typed in Dream Quest for like the first time in years, maybe?
Sure, yeah. I'm Peter. I'm a game designer. I made DreamQuest about 10 years ago, and then I worked at Blizzard on Hearthstone, and then in R&D, and now I'm at Riot as the game director on Teamfight Tactics.
Fantastic. That's wonderfully concise. Thank you. So just a bit of background. I reached out because I'm writing a blog on roughly the chronological history of the roguelike deck building genre, which
Okay.
basically just means I get to go through a bunch of indie games and sort of piece together if there's any kind of overlap or like interesting points of connection between them. The interesting thing to me about Dream Quest is that I knew it turned 10 this year, but I don't actually have a firm date. Not to put you on the spot, but like the only date I could locate for the original PC version is I think May 14th, 2014.
Yes, I
But it
believe
was
that is
out
right.
it was out on iOS before PC, is that right?
It was. I think May 14 is the iOS date.
Okay. All
I was
right,
checking
fair
some
enough.
old emails this morning in preparation for this, and the earliest stuff I've got is confirmation that it went up on May 14th. So I think that's the iOS date. And then it went up on Humble has a store associated with it. And
Oh
it was
yeah.
just really easy to get a PC game on that. But whereas Steam had to go through the greenlight process 10 years ago, which took
Mm,
much longer. And so it went up on iOS and Humble basically the same time, within a couple of days from each other, I think. Forgive me if my memory on this is wrong. And then the Steam greenlight was meaningfully later. That was after some of the Blizzard folks had seen it and were talking about it. That was after like Richard Garfield had said some stuff about it, and then
oh,
it
nice.
was able to move through the Steam process more quickly than it was just some tiny stick figure game.
Yeah, okay. Oh, that's fascinating. Oh, that's good to know. Because I find that with a lot of these earlier games I look at, I'm kind of just scrabbling around amongst like Moby Game posts and like Steam pages and like sort of hoping that they're accurate, but you're never quite sure. But yeah, that's put my mind to rest a bit. All right, well, could you tell me your influences in making Dream Quest, be they video games or board games or otherwise? I'm particularly curious, like, where did the dungeon crawling aspect come from?
It's funny. So that was the first piece for me. So I've been making games since I was a little kid. I've made mostly card games, but some board games. And then as I was learning new programming languages, I would just implement one of those games. So I learned Java, I implemented the CCG. I decided to pick up Unity when a few years later, and I built a CCG with a board game attached to it.
Mm.
And that engine that I use, I've been working on that for 18 months, 2 years, and it was starting to wrap up. It was kind of in lull a little bit. And I had the idea of like, hey, what if I just did something quick, some kind of palette cleanser? I just want to make a quick dungeon crawler. I love that dungeon crawler space. I used to play wizardry with my dad when I was a little kid. He would
Nice.
make invisible ink mazes for me on like graph paper,
Oh,
and we would do that together. And so like I love that dungeon crawling, go through a maze, explore all of the things space. I was like, okay, what if I just did that and the combat system was a card game? Lots of turn-based combat systems. There's lots of ways you can explore that. What if it was just a card game? So you had a little bit of variance between the things. It gives you a really clear progression scheme. Let's try that out. It took about a week to mock up the dungeon. I already had so much of the card engine that I could gut all of the pieces I didn't need and set it up. It only took like a week or two to get Warrior working, and
mm.
it was fun. It was like, hey, this is actually kind of cool. I want to do a little bit more of this, and so that's where it came from. Some of the specific inspirations. Chandelar, I call out in the page. Chandelar is this old Magic the Gathering adventure game that you would like build up your collection over the course of the game. You'd go through some simple dungeons, and you'd fight a bunch of monsters. Super fun. One of my favorite games of all time. Very much an inspiration. For the UX, there were a couple of inspirations. Ascension on mobile, I think, is just like a really well
Uh,
done mobile app that
I can say that.
helped guide some of how the look and feel was, stuff like the play all button. Um, some of those pieces really come from Ascension. And then Desktop Dungeons, which is this indie game where you go through the dungeon, fight monsters, level up. It looks like an RPG, but it's really a puzzle game. Also a game that I absolutely love. Very much an inspiration for some of the UX on the dungeon crawling side, and even some of the mechanics around how important leveling up is to restore your health, that Dream Quest
Mm.
has.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, two things that jump out to me while you were saying that was I was playing Dream Quest during the week in preparation for this, and like going through the sort of in-game achievements encyclopedia, I suppose you'd
Yeah.
call it. I realized that like one of like the spells or unlockables was straight up called Tilt Away, and I was like, wait, wizardry?
Yeah. Oh
There we
yeah.
go. Okay, I
There's
see the through
Tiltawait and
line now.
Mahamat.
Ah,
All
there we
right
go.
there.
There we go.
Now, when,
Um,
when I was a little kid, Mahalito was the fastest word I could type. Like faster than my name, faster than any school project. I could just type Mahalito in, 0 seconds.
oh, that's fantastic. It's so funny to me because like a couple of the mechanics do make me think of wizardry quite a lot. Like the was it the wizard's ability to teleport to like a different area in the dungeon, and sometimes you can like really put yourself in a difficult position to extricate yourself from. Reminds me of like teleporting yourself into stone in wizardry. And it's
Oh
like
yeah.
ah,
I
this.
never thought of that. I don't think it was a direct influence, but yeah, absolutely. You can get yourself in some
like,
bad positions if you don't have a good map.
thinking of that, like it now being 2024, like I'm really impressed by how many of the core elements that we now recognize as being a roguelike deck builder are already so set and defined in Dream Quest. Like concepts like being mindful of not over cluttering your deck as it becomes emergent as you play the game. Spending ages agonizing between floors over, oh, what perk do I want to take? Do I want more health? Do I want more mana? That kind of thing. But of course, the term roguelike deck builder didn't exist in 2014. So I was wondering, how did you describe or market Dream Quest when it came out to other people?
I, Basically, just that blurb. I mean, to the best of my knowledge, I coined the term roguelike deck builder without really having any idea that it was going to be a genre defining, like, it wasn't a genre, it didn't exist. This was just the name that I put for it. Um, I've thought in the years since then of like, wow, I could have picked anything for that. If I know other people were really going to pick it up, there could have been, card PG or, dungeon crawler or, dungeon card game. There's all sorts of options for that. But yeah, basically just the blurb that was in there. There was almost no publishing support. I had no idea how to market. I was sort of softly a programmer and I like to make games. So my entire marketing arm was I Googled iOS game websites and just cold emailed the top 10 that showed up on a Google search to see if anybody would
Ah,
do anything. And uh, I got just so lucky. IGN used to publish like a weekly or an every couple of days. Here are the new games that came out on mobile recently. And for
mm,
whatever reason, I still have no idea. The author of that piece listed 3 games for that week, and it was Dream Quest and then 2 others. And from that, then Pocket Tactics picked it up because they'd seen that article and it was getting some traction on their forums. And then Touch Arcade picked it up. And then all of a sudden, like people actually saw this game that had no marketing budget. It had stick figure graphics. It was uh, a miracle that anybody saw it. But that first IGN piece, I think, really just that was my publishing. That was my marketing.
that's awesome. I remember when I wrote the initial blog post covering Dream Quest, um, I came across an old like rock paper shotgun article.
Yep.
Well, there was like a very short, like 200, 300 word thing about by some guy being like, I can't quite convey like how the extent to which this has taken over my life, and it is like the most slept on thing out there right now. But like the people who got to it early seem really, really enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, it was really fortunate. People just picked it up and they really liked it. It was a really cool experience as a student who loved games, but I don't know that I ever believed I could really make a career out of it. It was
Hmm.
transformative in a lot of ways.
Oh, that actually leads me really nicely into another question I had, which was um, something I find really enjoyable talking to indie developers about is that it's kind of difficult to explain to other people if they're not developers themselves, but most of them have some kind of uh, like element of coding trickery or thing that they pulled off while they were making the game that they were like, 99% of people playing this probably won't realize like how clever this little thing I implemented was. But I know it's there and I know it's working. I was curious, do you have like any like behind the scenes like developmental bits of trickery that you're really proud of DreamQuest having?
It's hard to remember now. The one that I remember feeling the most clever about was deck codes. Uh, after I'd shipped DreamQuest, one of the feature requests that I got was, could you add seeded gameplay? Like Free Cell used to have way back in the day, where somebody could say, here's this really cool seed. I want to share it with my friends and go put it out there. I was like, well, the game was completely not built to have anything like that. But if I look at it, I guess most of it's just coming from this seed, and I can rejigger things in a little way. And then it was, okay, how do I encode that in a string that is short enough that I feel comfortable sharing it? And also, if somebody's typing it in directly instead of not copy pasting, like, how do I make it not painful to do that? So it doesn't use one I or capital I, for example. It doesn't use O or zero. And then how do I use those letters to encode all of the information that needs to go into this? Like the how the dungeon's going to generate depends on what unlocks you have. I've got to encode that in here somehow. I've got to encode, the actual random seed and some of the other pieces that go into it. And it just worked. It only ended up taking a couple of days, but figuring out that algorithm and like how this thing that was totally not built was going to work out was a really cool experience.
That's well worth it though. I can think of like several runs during DreamQuest where I think to myself, wow, that is a phenomenally lucky first floor to start out with. And other situations where I think, I know I'm very bad at this game, but I wonder if this is possible.
I, I had a
I'm
friend.
sure I oh god.
No, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say I had someone I met through DreamQuest email me like six really hard dungeons. They were like, here's some weird dungeons that I ran into. Like, I think this one's impossible. I think these are just super interesting. And it was really fun going through those and like trying a bunch of times. I'm like, wow, yeah, this one is really hard. You're right.
So a couple of weeks ago, I started playing from scratch because I was playing on a new device, and I forgot that early on in the game, a lot of your first run's rewards will kind of be things like getting more starting gold, getting more mana
Yeah.
when you start out. So I like to think to myself with every deck builder I play, like, is it possible? Is it feasible for somebody to beat the game on their first run ever? And that's something I always think about because the first time I played Slay the Spire, I played it with a friend, and she and I like beat it on our first go, not because either of us are particularly good, but because it was quite a fun like co-op exercise to build a deck with another person sat there in the room with you. And then, like, when I tried playing Dream Quest with somebody else, I sometimes needed like another mind in the room, just because I'm like, well, I can't see the forest for the trees on some of these floors, like in terms of what the direction of the deck is, what's suitable for my character, that type of thing. But I'd love to know if anybody's like actually beaten Dream Quest on like, yep, first run,
Oh, sure. I've played a lot of fresh accounts and beaten it. That was an important balance thing
nice.
for me, and also just the way that my dev environment worked. It was usually just fresh runs when I was playtesting. So yes, lots and lots of times I've beaten it on a first run. It is really hard, and that's actually part of why there's power unlocks, is because I expect that even with all the power unlocks, the game is so hard that most people aren't going to win on the first try. And so I wanted to
Right.
give people an encouraging thing like, oh, I lost, but now I do more damage. Now I have some more health. Now I have some more gold. It's worth trying again. I think one of the biggest hurdles with a roguelike is after that first death, getting somebody to play again.
Yeah, right, right. And again, I think that's one of the things that Dream Quest is like a very important defining game for this subgenre because even though, death is permanent, you don't want the player to ever feel like their time's been wasted in losing a run. So
Yeah.
it all adds up. You accumulate your coins that you can spend on unlocks. Yeah, very foresightful bit of mechanic development that persists to this day, I thought. I was wondering, something I love talking to developers about is that sometimes their games undergo like radical transformations from concept to alpha, then alpha to release. Did Dream Quest undergo any kind of like really big design or mechanical overhaul during development, or was it pretty much as we see it now is the game it always was?
Yeah, so I started out by building that CCG, but by the time that I actually had the Dream Quest idea and I went in that direction, I was only about a year out from graduating. And so there was just this clock of I wanted to ship this game before I started working, in the corporate world and have a bunch of other responsibilities. So it was basically just here was the idea. We went forward with it. It was fun. And there was some cool stuff. There were phases where I would say like, hey, here's some more stuff that this game needs. Like there was a phase relatively late where there just weren't enough interesting there wasn't enough interesting stuff to do. The game needed probably 10 more cards that were weird. There were a lot of cards that were like normal. They do some damage, they do some healing, they do some shielding. It just needed some more weird. Or like there's like the book of random spells or whatever it is that you can get now that gives you a random card every turn. That's a good example of something that came out of that exercise of okay, let's just sit down and design 10 weird things that just add some spice to the game.
That makes sense. Yeah. Something I love, like every time I go back to Dream Quest, is um, every run I'll come across a card where I have to sort of challenge my own biases in building my decks. I can either stick with this card that I know the effect of every round, or I can kind of go off the beaten path, but I'm on floor two and I already really like the direction this deck's already going in, and I don't want to, just upset the boat uh, deck wise. But yeah, like I'm pretty sure I'll probably go the rest of my life without seeing every single card in the game, probably, and that's a good
Probably.
thing, I
There's a
think.
lot of cards.
I wanted to ask actually about playtesting and balancing a single player game. And I think you'll probably have a very unique perspective on this, given that you were involved in what for many people is the PvP deck builder in Hearthstone, right? So, could you speak a little about the different challenges between refining a single player deck builder, perhaps compared to a multiplayer one?
Yeah, they're pretty different. And it's also really different doing it as part of a team with, you know, mature, long tenured game designers versus being a single person. I'm just
Sure.
making this game for the first time. My playtesters are a couple of friends that I can rope into to playing some games.
Mhm.
So really, really different processes there. When I was working on Dream Quest, a lot of the stuff that you're looking for balance wise there is just what is the most fun experience? It's totally fine if players win. It's totally fine if there's stuff that's super OP, especially when you've got a bunch of classes. Dream Quest has whatever 13 classes. Some of them are totally OP. The dragon is just silly. The professor is unbelievably powerful, and that's okay. And even among the
Yeah.
starting classes, I think the priest is the hardest of them, and that's totally fine.
Ah,
Players have the choice of picking whatever class they want to do, and they can go through with that. Like the necromancer, I think has a disproportionately low win rate, at least among people I talk to. I don't actually collect any stats or any information from the game whatsoever. Um, but that's totally okay as long as they're fun and they're interesting and they're somebody's favorite. That's really, really what you're going for. When you're looking at a multiplayer PvP game, something like Hearthstone or like TFT, it's really important that everybody's having a fair and fun and balanced experience, which means, yes, you want to make sure everybody's having fun, but not at the expense of the rest of the people they're playing against. Like with a single
right.
player game, the computer doesn't care if you're doing total nonsense that makes them feel awful. If you're making them discard their hand every turn, the computer doesn't care. It's fine to just like sit there and get beat up. In PvP, a lot of people care. That's an awful
Right.
experience to play against.
Yeah, I totally get that. The other thing, I suppose, is that if you've gotten to the point where you've unlocked some of those end game, I guess, kind of prestige classes like the dragon, you've probably already like really worked out how to play Dream Quest. So
Yeah,
at
that's
that
the
point,
hope.
you totally deserve having your completely broken class. Like, have fun with it. Like, you clearly know what you're doing at this point.
So it's funny. That was what I thought too. But when I launched the game for the first week, the meta strategy that was appearing on the forums and that people were talking about was okay, what you actually do in Dream Quest is you grind the first floor and you just you kill the first boss and die. And that's the fastest way to get points. And you do that 150 times. That gives you enough points to unlock the dragon. And then you use the dragon to farm all the other achievements. And that was awful. And people seemed really miserable about it. So the bard, the dragon, and the professor no longer get achievement points. I had to patch that in fairly quickly just because people were just taking all of the fun out of the game for themselves.
That's that's one like the funny challenges I imagine is like really hard for developers to work out is that you've got what you envision as being the meta of playing the game, and then the meta of just unlocking things quickly.
Yes.
And these are not the same thing.
Yes, I like to think that these days, like I would have picked up on that, or certainly on TFT, somebody on the team would have picked up on that, but it just didn't even cross my mind that people were going to do that.
That's so funny to me. Oh, okay. Yeah, thinking of some of those classes, actually. You said there's like what, like 13, 14 character classes?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, 14 now.
uh,
That's right. I added the druid. You're
yeah,
right.
that's right. That's right, the druid. Like I find Dream Quest challenging. I can probably count on one hand the number of times I've actually beaten it. It's funny, despite how much I like this subgenre, I'm not really very good at it. But hey, if it's got cards, it's got things to explore, I'm happy, really. And Dream Quest's got plenty of that. But I do feel Dream Quest is firm, it's fair. Every artist, every developer is their own harshest critic, but with hindsight, are you still happy with the variety and balance, or can you readily think of anything you do differently with it now?
Oh, there's plenty of things I do differently with the game. Variety and balance, I actually feel pretty good about. I actually really like how many different archetypes you can spin up. I like how different the classes are. There's individual ones like the Ranger. I don't know that it ever got like a great identity, but of the 14 classes, I think I'm pretty happy with the majority of them. Um, Balance wise, it's too hard. I think at for me, who's played lots of deck building games, who knows all of the mechanics inside and out, and who had been playing constantly for a year, I was not the best target for where the balance should be. But when I shipped DreamQuest, I expected I would be the only player. It didn't really occur to me that, hundreds of thousands of people would download and play DreamQuest. It was really, I was just making a game that I thought would be fun for me that I could play on airplanes or on bus rides. So it was very much tuned for me. So after launch, I added a couple more difficulties that were easier and I started you on one of those. In retrospect, I'd go even easier than that though, than where it is right now. I think it could have easily pushed meaningfully easier and then had unlocks for the harder difficulties, much more like say Slay did. Like Slay the Spire has the many ascension levels. It starts much, much easier than something like Dream Quest does. I think that was
Sure.
a good innovation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, I suppose like following on from that, like how about like the tone and the presentation of the game? Because every like review or like discussion like I see of Dream Quest, people will eventually get around to bringing up like the graphical style of it, like the art style of it. And
Yeah.
for some people, that's just like a hard thing they'll just bounce off of. And it's like, I move a stick figure around a map. I can't get on with that. And that's a real shame because I feel like an awful lot of people are doing themselves out of a really entertaining game if they can't see past the art style of it. I think that it's got a really nice tongue-in-cheek tone. I love the opening scroll that you get every time you start a new run, and certain nouns or phrases are randomly switched around. But the more runs you do, the more you realize, oh, hang on, it's actually a hint as to what the boss on this floor is going to do. Um, I think that's really, really clever. I suppose there isn't really much of an overarching story to it, but still thinking of wizardry, that doesn't have much of one either. It is very purely gameplay focused. But yeah, like the homemade quality of it, I suppose, in some ways, is a bit of a tough sell to people. Like I was curious, who designed the artwork for the cards? Like,
So any artwork that's good is
yeah.
my wife, who is I guess my
Mhm.
girlfriend at the time, or my sister. Any artwork that's bad is me. So if you look at it, and like some of the characters are fantastic. My wife did a lot of those. My sister did a bunch of the icons. Anything that's like the card art, very much me. And a lot of
Right.
those are very much representative. The most important thing to me was you could tell the cards apart, that they were
Yes.
differentiable and that it was easy to remember which one was which. And I actually think that part landed well. If I could go back in time, I wish I could have gotten better art for it, that I had had the time or the resources or any of those pieces to get the art into a better space. But I didn't, and I'm pretty happy with the
Awesome.
game that shipped. But
Yeah,
I
no,
wish
absolutely.
that I wish it wasn't such a turnoff point for people.
Well, I think that, like you say, simple as the like stick figures on a lot of the card artwork are, I've never had a situation that I've had in some games that have like technically superior artwork where it takes me a moment to remember, okay, what does this card do? I've actually got to reread the text or tooltip over it to work out what it does. Dream Quest never happens. Like I can readily see what that does. Like the priest cards, like depending on what type of prayer it is, has it got hearts? Has it got knives? Yeah, click. Yeah, click.
Yep, it's
So
very
I think it's
Pictionary
got a good
style.
simplicity. Yeah, that
Yes.
makes sense. Actually, thinking of cards, I normally end the blog posts I do for each of these games by choosing three or so cards that stood out to me, ones that either I like playing or ones that I like the artwork for, or just any reason that they stick out at all, like any reasons legit. I'm curious, what are your favorite cards? Do you have any that you instantly pick anytime you do a new run? Or are there any that
Oh,
you like basing a new run around?
so I mean, I'll pick Circle anytime I see it. I actually really like
Yeah.
Circle because it's one of those cards that's clearly really good. You should just clearly take it every time, and it kind of shapes how your run plays out, and it
Yeah.
changes the classes that get easy access to it. I actually think that one's pretty cool. Um, I really like Meteor. I know a lot of the best players that I've talked to that play Dream Quest think that the fire skill line is pretty bad, especially for Magic, but I tend to put more emphasis on making sure I win the first floor and the second floor rather than have the best possible deck at the end of the game. I actually think both Fireball and Meteor are very good for that. Meteor, I just think is cool. Um,
Yes. I'm a big
and the
fan of
third one,
Meteor.
I'm gonna forget the name. Whatever the Book of Random Spells is that adds a random card to your hand every turn, I really love
It's
that artifact.
fun. Yeah, it's fun. I like it a lot.
So I think those are my three favorites: Circle, Meteor, and then I'm sorry, I'm just forgetting the name on that card.
Oh no, that's all right. Personally, I'm a really big fan of any game that lets me mindlessly play card after card after card after card. This is
Yep.
why I don't play like CCGs in real life because it'd be miserable playing against me. The other side just would not get a turn. So I'm a really big fan of things like Rallying Stroke when you're playing as the thief
Sure.
class, where it's
Yep.
just sort of like and another and another and another,
Yep.
and
Yep.
it frees up brain space I don't have basically. But
Yep.
yeah, big
Whatever the
fan of that.
paladin spell is that draws 5 cards and discards any non-attacks, also fantastic for that.
Yes, that's a good point. Do you have any character classes that you're happy to have put in there, or ones that you personally enjoy playing as?
Yeah, so I tend to gravitate towards the magic classes. I know most people have rogue or warrior as their favorite. My favorite of the starting classes is wizard, and then I really like playing the
Mm.
necromancer as my favorite of the tier 2 classes. And then professor, I'm just glad it worked out. I have That's the one that steals monster cards, and so
Ah,
you
yeah,
can
yeah, yeah.
build like just totally crazy, totally busted decks, and that one's really fun to use.
Oh, that's cool. I like that. I feel like personally, I always go for either the warrior or the thief out of the starting classes.
Yep.
That's purely just because those are the ones that I tend to have the greatest success with. Um, I do like the priest though. I love the sort of how do you describe it? The sort of staking a turn and an effect that will hopefully pop off like two, three, 4 turns from now, and either it comes through clutch at the last possible moment, or it's like, I put on one counter too many, paid the
Yes.
price.
Yes, the priest has the most like in combat decision making of all of the starting classes, and some people really love that. And I think
Mm.
there's a really good like playing the priest. You feel really smart when it all comes together. That
Yes.
really appeals to a certain style of player. The players I found who are like, I love the priest. It's my favorite class. Or like that is all I want to do. I just want to main priest. And
Mm.
as opposed to some of the other ones where it's like, hey, I'll play warrior and also rogue and also just try them all out. But even though I think priest is the least popular of the starting four, I'm really glad it exists because it really speaks to a certain play style.
Yeah, I mean, if I remember right, it's the first one that comes up when you hit new game. Like that's the first class you're presented with, I
I
think.
believe it's random. I believe it sorts you
Oh,
through that list at random.
oh, does it? Oh, okay, fair enough. Or it could just
I'm
be
not sure.
I could be the one person on Earth who gets priest every single time.
Possible.
Who knows? But yeah, like I really like anything where it's like it's got that element of gambling danger to it, I
Yes.
suppose.
I suppose it could be alphabetical, in which case priest would be first, but I thought it was random.
Oh, possible. Also possible. Yeah, I mean that's just an excuse for me to like reinstall it on yet another device, I suppose. All right. So my final real question is that now that the game's 10 years old, are there any thoughts that you've had about Dream Quest's place in this genre or its impact on your career that you'd like to use this opportunity to talk about now? Or have you come across anybody in the wild who's played Dream Quest and like wasn't aware that, oh, snap, you're the guy who made it?
Oh, that's definitely happened. I think there's a lot
That's
of people in
awesome.
the games industry, in particular, that have ended up playing Dream Quest, and so that just happens sometimes. I had breakfast with our chief financial officer. I don't know, a couple months ago, and he goes, "Oh, let me show you my phone." He pulls out his phone. He's got his game folder, and he's got TFT there, and right next to it is Dream Quest. And he's like,
Yes, there we
I
go.
still have it on my phone. I'm like, oh my God, that's fantastic. That's so cool. So the effect it's had on my career is immeasurable. I never expected I could really land a job in games. Like when I was a little kid, I always said I wanted to work in games. When I was 13, my parents were like, no, no, but really, what do you want to work at? What do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, I want to work in games. I want to be a game designer. I want to go work for BioWare or Wizards of the Coast or Blizzard. Like those are my favorite game companies. That's what I'm going to do. And then I grew up and I went down the math path. I was going to go work at Amazon as a researcher. And I launched DreamQuest, and all of a sudden, all these people in this world that I dreamed of for a long time reached out, and they were like, "Hey, I work on Hearthstone. Do you? I love DreamQuest. What, do you have any interest?" I woke up one morning among the best days of my life to an email from Richard Garfield that was like, I I thought maybe it was spam the first time. It's like, hey, my name's Richard Garfield. I designed Magic the Gathering. I absolutely love Dream Quest. I just want to talk to you about Dream Quest. Here's some ideas that I have.
It's
It's this
incredible.
really great game. I looked you up online. I'm actually a combinatorist as well. That was my math discipline, and
Oh, well.
that email ended up leading to like I went and played board games at his house, and this was one of my idols for my entire
Nice.
life. And so like the impact, it's hard to overstate what an impact Dream Quest has had on my professional career, on my personal life. Like I I get to work at Riot right now. I get to work on Teamfight Tactics, which is this amazingly giant game with really, really wonderful people on an IP I absolutely love. Like how lucky is that? All from making this little stick figure game when I was in school.
That's incredible. I mean, I was somewhat intimidated in reaching out to you slightly because when I was playing Dream Quest, and at first I thought to myself, well, this was 10 years ago, and it's a relatively niche indie game now, but to me and the amount of enjoyment I've derived from it, I'd love a chance to talk to the person behind it. And then, of course, immediately realizing, well, snap, this guy's gone on to things like Hearthstone, TFT. I'm just like a random hobbyist. He has gone up in the world, shall we say? So I'm not sure if I stand much chance of having a conversation with him.
No,
But
I'm really glad it
you're,
worked out. I when Caitlin mentioned it, I'm glad it was able to come together.
yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I like sort of pursuing these things is that like this subgenre, I suppose, even if there is like a very ready set of mechanics running through them that you can identify from game to game to game, the backgrounds of the people behind them are strikingly different. And even like the influences or the things that they went on to do after that, like legitimately fascinating to me. And I keep thinking, well, if I don't ask them, then I'm not sure who's going to. And already after 10 years, that's a lot of time to forget things.
Yes, I am sure that some of the things I've said, especially if you're asking dates and timelines, who knows? But doing our
It's
best.
that we're doing what we can. We're doing what we can. All right. So I'm just going to wrap up. Is there anywhere online in particular that you'd like to be found? Is there anything you're working on now or you've got upcoming you'd like to share with us?
Online, I mean, I have a LinkedIn, I have a Twitter. I tend not to use them very much, so I'm
There.
pretty hard to reach. Outside of that, stuff I'm working on right now, I mean, TFT is great. TFT is super exciting. We're in the process of announcing our next set. Really, really excited about that. Uh,
Nice.
so that's going to look really cool. We've got all sorts of crazy stuff planned for the rest of the year and into next year. It's just a fun game to work on with a really great crew and with a really fantastic future ahead of us and a really amazing player base. So mostly right now, my head's in the TFT space of there's a lot of cool stuff going on there, a lot of cool stuff we're launching, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Peter, thanks so much for your time. I'm super thrilled that we got onto this.